everyone. Today we're going to talk about Brangus, mostly for Set Your Course for All-Around, but we'll also talk about PDS2, but also other formats as well, due to requests. So we're going to try to give an overview and kind of be as comprehensive as we can within the time limits that we have. So this is the first version of Brangus that was published. This is the GEMP version. This GEMP version, you find the sample decks. I also copied over to here myself. One thing to note is that this is technically not the version he has. This deck has Janus, where the first deck did not have Janus. It had Frustration. So although this is Bastion, this is really Bastion, like. It's very close, but we need Frustration as soon as possible, please. You can see that from the original, the original deck list here. And he wanted to have Janus. He says Blonde's deck, he replaced Java, but it's really just supposed to be Frustration is what it's supposed to be. There's another deck tech from Board Mat. You can see that. In essence, the main point of this deck is that you're taking advantage of Set Your Course for All Turns ability, where it says your force drains and battle damage against you is canceled. What does that mean? It means at the Death Star, you can occupy the docking bay. You can get the benefit from mobilization points, which gives you 2 for there. And it gives you time to set up your plans. At its base, it's a control deck, right? So what you're doing is you're occupying the Death Star, you're drawing 50 million cards, and then you're waiting for the opponent to, present itself, right? So this version, he later updated. He later updated 2021. There's good cards in the old version that did not continue, like, Mayum Unith, which can, get rid of the opponent's stuff. If you know that you're playing, for instance, Mind We Have Learned deck, then Dagobah Cave combined with Fail at the Cave can be very useful for you, right? Because the main thing that Brangus does is that he switches out docking bays from hand. You can exchange them. So what you'll do is that if you draw an extra docking bay, and let's say you did Fail at the Cave, let's say they canceled it, let's say they moved back away again, then you could grab this again, basically. But basically, any card in your deck, you can exchange for docking bay, and then later on, when you're ready, if you have 2, you can do with 1, but this card really makes a difference with 2. You can retrieve 2 cards of Death Star into title. Well, Death Star docking bay has the word Death Star in it, so basically what happens is you end up netting 1 card. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to use cards which have a lot of impact by themselves. So Vayra Saber, if he dies, get him back. Use him again, pretty simple, pretty easy. If Bowbone Fed or Zuckuss or Boss go away, get him back. It's especially potent with the TIE Squadron. So the Emperor Sword, Emperor Shield, you can utilize with Senior Fleet systems. And so basically, you can deploy one of these 2, retrieve 3 force with CNR, and then if it dies, you can immediately switch a docking bay back and get it back. Subsequent turns, next turn, for instance, while the setup, during each your deploy phase, may take 1 star Death Star into hand from reserve deck. So basically, if you get back your docking bays from your lost pile, you can get them back into your hand very quickly to kind of rinse and repeat this cycle as much as possible. And it can be very frustrating. And we'll kind of go into these possibilities. So, like I said earlier, Bastion updated this deck in 2021, and I feel this deck is much stronger. And part of the reason is that if you look kind of the card choices here, you have a lot more cards which do damage outside of combat. So, for instance, you have numbers 3,721, meaning that if you just, for instance, you had like Emperor Palpatine, Janus, and Brangus, and your opponent didn't have many characters, you could do damage, equal to the difference in Destiny modifiers. It's not the best, only because there's Honor of the Jedi, for example. So Honor of the Jedi will cancel this, or I guess cancel the wrong word, but it'll reduce it by 2. And of course, Insight Serves You Well is a hard counter to this, because it just canceled completely. So many people, when they're playing this, they'll get rid of this. It does have a use, depending on kind of the deck your opponent will utilize. So can be useful. I would say don't automatically get rid of it, but this is 1 damage card, and the second kind of damage card is Sabak, where basically the idea is that you'll stack 2 cards. So for instance, what you'll the most easy combo to do is you'll use Masterful Move, you use one force, and then you'll put the 6 on top, and then immediately the Emperor will shock, usually, usually be Janus, could be bad, could be Brangus, doesn't matter who it is, and then you'll have a 6 followed by 5 on top, and then whenever you play Sabak, you will automatically have an 11, and 11 is a perfect Sabak, meaning that your opponent's 2 cards are automatically lost. And so what you'll do is that because you're going to track your destiny, meaning that you're going to have a Sabak card, a 6, and the 5 there, right all next to each other. Janus, if he's out, he's going to use the ability where he's going to use one force to place a card at bottom to drop top card of the reserve deck. So you're going to wait until your Sabak is right on top, and then immediately afterwards, you are going to play Trooper Sabak again, because remember, this is on the top card reserve deck, so you're going to, on a future turn, you're going to activate cards until you get to Sabak, grab it with Janus, and then immediately play it, and then you're going to do 6, and 5 perfect Sabak, so you're going to win pretty much every time, unless like your opponent gets lucky and they also have perfect Sabak, which is rare. Could happen, but it's rare to do. So it has that second way of doing direct damage, in addition to just, flat out deploying people, attacking, first strike, doing damage. Or if you absolutely need to, you can use Kashyyyk. So if your opponent gives you no options and there's not much you can do, you can always just deploy Kashyyyk, and you can drain there until they're dead, right? If your opponent doesn't give you sites to do. So it's a very flexible deck because of how it's done. For instance, like if your opponent has a bunch of like low power units of characters or ships or vehicles, whatever, you can use counter assault, you can get it back. If your opponent, let's say for instance they had like they have control here. Yeah, he has control, right? Yeah, so he doesn't have control in this deck. So one version of this deck is they have control. So let's say you had a super home 1, right? They were home 1, and let's say that they were at, let's say they were at Kessel, and let's say they were draining you there for 3, right? Well, you can use control, cancel the drain, and then you can use Brangus to exchange a docking bay and immediately get the control back. Lots of other decks have a few other options of kind of how they like to do this. We'll kind of get into those later. To appreciate kind of the power of the decks, luckily we have a few videos of Bastion using this deck here, and I think we can kind of see it in action and see some of the meanness in play. A couple of potent weapons here are the fact that he has Overload, which means he can kill anyone or ship or whatever with a weapon. If he draws a 0, well, we have these 2 docking bays, extra docking bays. We also have Ozzel, plus we have Kashyyyk. So we have ways of getting a 0, tracking a 0. In addition, the fact that he has Trample, right? And he has Trample combined with lots of high destinies, but especially Mournful Roar, which is most of the time a useless card, but if you can get this into your deck, usually with Janus, you can track the 7, and eventually you can trample even a Jedi Luke or Obi-Wan, or people that are normally hard to do. So one misnomer about this deck is, yes, it's called Brangus Glee Superstar, however you want to do it. The default is usually 3. However, I would say to you that the very strong helper to Brangus is Janus. Why? Because Janus, if you're using his ability, you are drawing a card off the top of your reserve deck, meaning you're getting through your deck quicker than you otherwise would have, and you're also able to put cards back into your deck. So if you find the Mournful Roar, you can put it back into your deck to track it. If you have Kashyyyk in your hand and you need a 0 for Overload, you are able to put it into there easily with Janus. So I would never recommend going below 2 Januses. You could also use Reactor Terminal, which is what the previous version did. The biggest issue, that is the wrong one. The regular Reactor Terminal is this one, where the issue with this one, of course, is that you can only do it during your control phase. This Janus, you can do it anytime you want to. You can do it during your opponent's turn. And oftentimes it's good for you to do during your opponent's turn, just so you are getting through deck quickly. One disadvantage of this deck type is that its force, it doesn't have a lot of extra sites. The first version of Brangus had a little bit more. He had Dagobah Cave and 2 hot sites, in addition to kind of just his generic like site or system. So it was Cantina, now it was Kashyyyk. So compare this to say like Bring 'em Before Me, where Bring 'em Before Me naturally gets a lot of force because you can deploy the Emperor really quick to Death Star 2 docking bay, and usually have Executor docking bay. And generally speaking, you're able to move a little bit quicker. In addition to, Bring 'em Before Me doesn't start out with giving 2 force, right? Bring 'em Before Me start with Throne Room, right? Start with Throne Room here, and you're not giving any opponent's force away. Whereas if you're starting with, set your course for Alderaan, yeah, you're starting with Death Star and Death Star docking bay, and you're able to get, Death Star War Room during the course of the game. But you're also giving 2 force off the get-go. You're giving 1 for Alderaan and 1 for, Death Star docking bay, which means your opponent's tempo is a little bit better. Um, so, that's one issue, but most of the time you can work through it. So let's watch a couple games. Let's kind of see it in action, and we'll give some commentary about how to play this well. And we're going to play at increased speed. Yeah, we want to do double speed. Yep, thank you. And let's get through this. So kind of the first game starts normal. What's he doing here? He's just deploying Janus to docking bay here, and he's going to get mobilization points because he's going to try to activate more force is what he's trying to do. And it's kind of hard to see how much he's activating here, but yeah, okay, he's 12 icons because his opponent's giving him 50 million. Okay, that's fine. Pretty standard stuff. He's playing Mind of Learn. Okay, fine. Yoda's doing his thing. Meanwhile, Bastion is just going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's going to draw cards until he needs to. He activated 12 force. So what's he going to do? He's just getting the cards he needs. One thing you'll notice, of course, is Bastion would love to start with first strike. I'm always a little bit nervous doing that personally, but it seemed to work for him. Alternative could be battle order, could be cannot hide forever, depending. But it is nice to get 1 force back. So in his mind, his testing was perfectly good and fine just to start with that. And so you can probably do the same here too. So, yep. Yeah. So let's move around. Okay, so eventually he ended up deploying Brangus. He deployed both of them here. Alternatively, you could put 1 over there. I'm not sure you necessarily want to stack. But I guess if 1 survives, you want to get the 4-string bonus later. It's not a big deal. You take no battle damage of the Death Star, so it doesn't make that big a difference for you. So, Bastion's hand is huge. It's kind of hard to see this right here because there's a ton of cards. You want a ton of cards because you want to, do your stuff. Okay, so he was waiting for his opponent to do something. He decided to play Kashyyyk with Saber 1 and Baron Fell. He adds 1 Battle Destiny and then 1 to each draw. So he's just chillaxing there, and he's going to drain him slowly and surely. So he tries to bury him. He cancels the barrier. Okay, he's trying to, hurt him with a Leia, and he's deploying 3 people. You want to deploy Obi-Wan. He asked for a revert. Okay, fine. Do that. He'll offer the revert. Not a big deal. So he's just biding his time. Okay, so, he revealed anger, fear, aggression. Okay, fine. So he's activating more force. Okay. Yep. So he played Imperial Barrier. Okay. Yeah. All right. Now he's going to deploy Zuckuss. He's going to attack him. Get 2 Battle Destiny here. Try to do set for stun first before he starts the battle against Captain Han Solo. So he needed a 4, he drew a 0. So I think he's just drawing blindly here. But remember, as soon as he uses set for stun, it goes on the top of the lost pile. And immediately what he does is he exchanges it. So that means that he's going to exchange it, get this back to his hand so he can try again. So basically he can gamble again. And it's not a bad gamble because this deck has a lot of high destiny, so he can try again if he has sufficient force. So he's going to deploy Forlom there. Okay. So we're going to get 3 Battle Destiny here. And I guess he's going to start the battle first. Now he's going to do set for stun. And he got it. He got a 4. So now he's going from 3 Battle Destiny. You try to make him draw again with his Captain Han Solo ability, but it didn't matter. He drew another 4 anyway. And he's going to go from 3 to 1 Destiny. And so now he's going to use On the Edge to try to kill off Leia, because he doesn't want to be totally overflowed by Leia, which is understandable. So, yeah, and so Leia's going to Lost Pile. And so basically, you know, he is frustrating his opponent's plans. All right, so what happened here? He exchanged it. He's going to exchange something again. No, okay, no exchange. He's just tracking a destiny now. Okay. So he's going to activate more force. And he's going to Monarch his opponent. Let's see what he has. So Captain Han, Captain Nun, I know it could be worse. Obi-Wan. Captain Han, he has 2 Captain Han, so he returned that Captain Han to Solo, to hand. Now he has 0. Now he gets his Monarch back. All sections on alert, which means he used 2 docking bays in the past, so he's going to try to get 2 docking bays. Oh, yeah, 2 docking bays back to his hand. And then next turn, he's probably going to exchange that card back in his hand, depending. And this video is almost over. So what does Mr. Tarkin do? Yeah, he didn't grab stuff for stun, and he gave up, basically. So he lost that 1 battle, game over, right? So amazingly powerful, right? And that's what you'll notice a lot of times when people are facing against Brangus. They just give up, right? So let's watch this video a little bit here. And again, let's be double speed. Yep, be fast as we can. So we're going to start this again. Okay, so light side goes a little bit faster since they start TRM. It's fine. Okay, so Brangus he's gonna deploy Brangus on top of a AT-AT. Benefit of that is that it's harder to hit Brangus, so he can survive a little bit longer if your opponent is, eager. Blast door controls, extremely important here. Yeah, extremely important. Let's see what else we can do here. So he's deploying Can I Come Here, Big Coward. He's making it difficult for his opponent to force drain him extra. He's forcing his opponent to go do something else. His opponent's doubling up. He deploys Emperor, so he's solidifying his hold on the docking bay. His opponent's deploying Han, deploying, Civil Disorder, trying to make it so that the opponent kind of has to do something. Okay? Now, if we look at this a little bit carefully, right, he used Force Lightning there, and we're going to kind of see where that comes up here soon. All right, so the opponent deployed a home 1 by himself, did nothing basically, right? And then, eventually, okay, so no, he deployed a Zuckuss first. Zuckuss with that. Okay, he's going to deploy a home 1 there. And then his opponent's going to try to attack him and gamble with him. That's a very disastrous idea. for multiple reasons. So he's using Emperor to kind of shuffle his deck, get another look at it. Draws a 5, but that's going to end up being a 0, and then Bastion gets to draw 2, and then he gets to draw a 6. So he drew an 8. That is enough to overcome immunity barely. I think he got a little bit lucky there, but then home one there. So he should not have battled. He should have waited just to move the guys. Got a little bit greedy, and that cost him in that particular case. So if Brangus is playing slow and steady, you need to think about doing the same thing, not fighting when you're not ready, right? I think that was just a little bit greedy, especially since he knew he had 2 battle destiny there. So I would not do that. All right, so Brangus force training for 2. Played Monarch. And then now he's going to play Trooper Sabak. So what happened was the opponent's trying to sense this, and they failed. But because he did the combo, because he kind of drew, like I said earlier, he got the masterful move, he got the Force Lightning, he tracked those destiny. He used Force Lightning after he did his masterful move. Now he can just, now he can just make him lose the top 2 cards. So he tried to sense it, failed. And so now he's just has to kind of, suffer it. So he was, All Stars was complaining because he missed it, lost the top 2 cards, very frustrating, understandable. And yeah, he didn't grab either card basically, and his sense got grabbed. So his ability to continue troubling him is diminished because his sense got grabbed, right? So hell to pay and push on us are the preferred methods. So he deployed his ties there. I'm not entirely sure why there, but he did. I don't think he retrieved for that. So we'll keep on going. Okay, he's deploying some more cards, and then it's Bastion's turn, right? So Bastion, able to deploy Janus. Okay, great. That's nice. And okay, he's doing a couple force drains here. Okay, he's doing some damage. It's not the end of the world. Okay, use a projective telepathy. Okay, make him pay a little bit extra force. He's putting order to engage out. But Bastion's just taking the damage, and the opponent probably doesn't have more than 2 ships here, so he's probably safe for now. And his opponent's stacking up, trying to get a nice stack here, trying to be safe towards an eventual, attack or whatever later. So he deploys Vader, moves Vader Odor, then he immediately circles now complete Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan doesn't have enough power and lose immediately. He didn't have, Courage of a Skywalker. And we have, the second grabber for Bastion. And okay, you out of commission 1 thing, fine. But also notice he moved over his, AT-AT. Remember, he's been stacking his destinies. So, what's going to happen here, right? So Jedi Knight Luke. Oh, sorry, I think I skipped over the cool part here. Yeah, so use a Corellian slip. Okay, fine, use that slip. Reshuffle your deck, that's fine. But then he does trample, and he trampled with a track destiny that he did from Janus the previous turn. And now Jedi Knight Luke 7 kills the 6, he's dead, right? So he had 6 guys there, he has 5. And suddenly this, this big force is much more nasty looking, and having the ties there is better because you want them to die first, basically, so you can get them later. It's kind of what you want. So I missed a step here. Yeah, so basically, remember, he knows where the trample is, right? Because it was in his used pile last turn. So you track that card. You remember where that is in your deck. You say 3 from the bottom, 4 from the bottom. You grab it, and then you trample again, right? So now you can trample a second person. So he chooses to trample Han, and then there goes Civil Disorder. Okay, he's going to deploy Bausch. I think this is still an issue. Yeah, so you can, break cover Bausch, fine. Gonna start a battle, but you can't retrieve because you don't only control one battleground. You have to be careful about that. So this card is not helping him retrieve. That's the problem. Nor is his opponent's card. So that's the main issue. Lost home 1, so he's in a bad spot. Yeah. So yeah. So hitting Leia, it's gonna be an ouch. And I think over here, yeah, he uses, what did he do over here? Quickly. Yeah, trample. Yep. You grab the trample again. Yep. So the high forfeit guy was gone here. So now you have to battle. Now you got hit. Now basically what used to be a force of 6 guys is down to 1, and he forfeits that guy. Right? So that's the power of using that trample multiple times. Very devastating. So again, that game he pretty much gave up there, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it for that game. So again, just devastating. Okay, so let's watch another game here. Let's watch kind of the final confrontation. This is just another kind of instructive deck on what to play and what not to play versus Brangus, right? So starts as standard 3 for strike, mobilization points, press enforcement. Okay, so Hayes, gets lucky, gets a +2 thing. Emperor comes out a little bit later than normally desired. Fine. A little bit of numbers protection here. Okay, seeing our fleet systems. Okay. He deploys Luke there. He deploys Janice there. Then Luke's going to drain him for a little bit for a while. Janice is going to track some destinies. So deploys that G88. And is just waiting. Okay, he deploys Tantive. There's no come here big coward yet. So he could potentially drain at the Death Star. The problem is a question of when Coward gets there. But he's trying to make it so it's hard for him to shove him off there with canceling Battle Destiny. So he moves the nudge there and he moves over here. Okay. So the question is, what's Bastion going to do? So again, he's biding his time. He has 17 cards in his hand, and it's okay. It's okay, right? So okay, so he deploys Leia here. He's going to try to fight. You have to be really careful. If you're going to fight here, you should obviously Genesis is who you want to kill, but it'd be ideal if you could kill the Emperor if you tracked a destiny high enough. That would be what you really want, but he barriered. Try to sense the barrier, but then he grabbed the sense. So I think Hayes has like 7 senses in this deck, and it is canceling those senses is going to add up basically, or grabbing them anyway. It's going to cost more force each time. And Bastion generally has a little time to wait, because 1 force a turn is doable. So lost there, forced to lose Janus. Okay. Go on a little bit. Another Janus, blast door controls. Come here, big coward. Now the Tantive 4 is kind of useless, right? So now it can't drain there. Now he committed 3 cards that can't be used, right? So he needs to occupy 2 battlegrounds now in order to do something. Bastion's going to go ahead and kill this nudge just to get himself more things, more force icons. It's like there's another card played, but then another sense goes there, right? So he's trying to do Twilight Advisor or whatever he's trying to do. Doesn't really matter. He's trying to do a card, he's sensing it, but there's only so many senses in his deck. So he's deploying. I guess he needs the cards there, so he retrieves some force there. Fine. It's not always ideal to do this, but if you really need to retrieve the 3 cards, it's certainly understandable. Because usually you want to deploy this and you want to die the same turn, ideally. So again, he's using Janus. He's tracking his destiny. Okay, he's going to do, Hayes is going to do 1 damage here. Pulling Brangus over here. So we'd have to have a spy to stop Brangus, and now we can start using a docking bay strategy. So he's deploying Obi-Wan there. That's also kind of risky. Okay, he's deploying Luke. He wants to occupy 2 battlegrounds. It's fine, understandable. So out of commission wasn't grabbed. Okay, looks like he altered that earlier. Okay, fine. And so now he moved him over, but now he can grab someone. So he tracked his mournful roar. Luke moved over, and now he is going to be captured. And that's it, right? That's it for Luke. It's going to be hard for him to get him. So you need to deploy more guys right there. Does have the, does have the AT-AT there. And he put IG-88 inside there, so it's harder for him to target him in battle. Okay, so our markers can go there. And, he tracked a trample there, and, there goes that guy. So what, he deploys a nudge here. Gonna Basically, Hayes knows it's over, right? He has a trample. He knows the trample is. He can just move over one site, and then Obi-Wan's finished. Um, and that's all it took. And that was it. And so you'll find that a lot of times the opponents just quit. So, um, yeah, so that's kind of the power of kind of this deck. Just a lot of abilities. You know, the extra kind of 7 here makes a big difference. All the cards are flexible. Alter is usable sometimes. There's lots of uses for this. A few people played around. So, you know, PMJ, how do we get this mess? They did a few things. So one card that people like to use many times is kind of lateral damage, which kind of um, Bastion is shoot a little bit. I think it's really powerful. You can use set for stun against people like things that cancel it. So like if you have lateral damage, you have the good people that cancel lateral damage, right? So you have like Major Hashin, you know, or whatever. Like Hashin can destroy it, or this droid can destroy it. Then use this as much, but you can set for stun, and then you can lateral damage, and then you can battle. For instance, Gravity Shadow, very powerful, right? You can track your destiny. So if you think a ship's going to move, and you know the ability of the highest pilot, you can instantly kill a pilot, or like you attack them, you can prevent them from moving, right? That's also very powerful. And so if you have an overwhelming force, you can make them suffer a lot. So, you know, there's other variants can be done. You know, bombers can be a good thing, right? So if you think about, you know, the 7 here is kind of useless for the most part. I mean, is it possible Chewie's on board and Han is lost? It is possible. Not a ton of decks use Chewbacca. But if you have like, you know, concussion missile, right? Not for the light side. Intruder missile, sorry. Intruder missile, right? The only way to steal this is with Cloud City Sabacc for the light side. So you could use this. You could kind of take advantage of kind of these, do that. For bombers, and you can bomb them a different way. You can kind of do Cloud City Sabacc. You can do like Downtown Plaza, use that to retrieve docking bays, Cloud City docking bay in addition, because if you control, use 1 force, retrieve Cloud City location. So that's another kind of combo that fits in with Brangus, because you retrieve a Cloud City location, you grab it back with Janice, you use it again with Brangus Glee, and then later on, you're going to pitch a different card, and then you're going to retrieve it. So this is another kind of net 1 loop that you can do. A lot of people use Endor. Endor is nicer because it drains for 2. So if someone has, let's say, Great Warrior, right, and they cancel drain bonuses, the drain of 2 here will remain because there's 2 icons there. So that can be a nice thing. It also synergizes with the Emperor's Shield because it's -2. So it can make that, you know, Endor can be better. The disadvantages, of course, if they have strike planning. If they have strike planning, then you get no icons. And so that's the biggest issue for Endor. Most of the time, though, not a ton of people use this. I mean, some decks do use it, of course. Some hidden base decks use this, depending. Few kind of Endor based decks use this. But generally speaking, Endor is usually a good bet, even if you potentially lose icons. And so, yeah, I think Dengar is very powerful, or kind of the original Dengar, kind of with his, you know, Blaster Carbine shooting 2, because this deck has lots of high destinies. You can really destroy them. You know, additional Bounty Hunter with ability 4 to kind of synchronize IG8. If you have Deja's Per plus IG8, you can draw 2 Destiny. Of course, Boba Fett, you know, is additional one that can add Battle Destiny with Han or Jabba. So you do, you know, Jabba, Boba Fett, and, you know, Zuckuss, you know, you can draw 3 Battle Destiny. You can get a bunch from those guys. So there's, you know, various ways to play. You know, Oneth is still very good. Voyeur potentially good, because when you're playing Sabacc, they're putting interrupts on the ground if you don't have perfect Sabacc, or they're using interrupts. So this can be another way just to aggravate them. So there's lots of variants to play. So there was one game where PMJ, they played the game similar to this, and we can kind of see from the gameplay kind of what happened. So what are the differences? Well, they added control, like I said. Control can be a very good option. It can kind of stop opponents if they're kind of home one, or like have a high drain. You can kind of retrieve this as well. Gravity Shadow, they had Voyeur, and they had kind of Coruscant, which can be a good replacement for like Dagobah Cave, as well as to cancel your opponent's Coruscant. So if they're playing like a TRM deck and they use Coruscant, or they're playing a hidden base deck and they use Coruscant, this can be kind of a good canceller for that potentially. So let's watch that game. Why are they doing that to me? Let's remove this. Thank you. Okay. This thing's giving me trouble here. All right, PMJ. Good. And we're going to be double speed. Absolutely. Okay, so let's watch this real quick. So standard start. He opts to do battle order instead. It's a safe thing. One less force to start a battle. It can be good too. So he's going to start this. And the opponent's going to start, he's just deploying at home 1. He's just trying to use staging areas. He's trying to get ready to deploy his home 1 at some point in time. So he has Emperor there, getting extra force activation. And again, he's drawing a ton of cards. When you play Brangus, you want to draw a ton of cards, right? So Grimtosh can be something to think about because it can really slow them down. So he got Gunite 2. Okay, fine. Gunite, he tried to play a card. He grabbed it. I generally suggest 3 cards here. So he played out of commission. Yes, grabbing out of commission is what you want to do as Brangus. Absolutely. It's one reason why we suggest having 3 grabbers as a default. All right, so he plays Seen Our Fleet Systems, get more retrieval with his ties. Moves Janus over there, so Janus is harder to kill. I agree with this because Emperor can only be hit. So you want Janus to help track your destinies. Did masterful move. And he's going to put something on the bottom. So he's tracking some destiny. Okay. The opponent's going to playing Inferior Aggression, playing Han, playing Leia. Okay. So playing all those people. He is going to play Come Here, Big Coward. He's going to make it hard for him to force drain at non-battleground locations. A very important card here in this deck. And what can you say? Right? Okay, so eventually he deploys Coruscant, gives a place for home 1 to go. And he's moving all his guys to Coruscant. He's trying to make a fortress at Coruscant. And the issue here, of course, is that, counter assault won't work because he has a high power. I can't say this power easily. I think it's 19 or something high, right? Something really high. So it's going to be hard to beat this battle. He'll have lots of extra battle destiny, but he's weakness to 2 things. One is the regular Coruscant site as well as control. So if you can get a control loop going with Brangus, he's not going to be doing as much damage. So let's see kind of how PMJ handles this. PMJ has 22 cards in hand. He is trying to, find a way to counteract this. So it looks like he drained him a little bit. Losing a few cards. Okay, he puts his own battle plan down. That's fine. I'm not sure you need to do that. He puts launch on the Assault. He's trying to make it, but then PMJ replaces it with the old Coruscant. So suddenly, it's not a battleground anymore. Suddenly, the force drain amount there is 0, right? So he put all these cards there. If you put, launching the Assault there, which adds to 1, and all of a sudden, this big ship does nothing for him. 0, zilch, nada. And now he has Brangus at the War Room, and he's just able to do, what he wants to do, right? So now he's trying to dump all his people back to the kind of Death Star docking bay, trying to make them do something. It's not great, but it's better than nothing, right? So he's trying to put all his guys back down and try to have some way to do some draining. So he's going to opt to go to home 1 docking bay, fine. Now it's Bastion's turn. So guess what? He deployed his AT-AT, and he trampled there goes Han. 6 is high enough. He's going to play numbers. So he knows that he still has a bunch of extra guys out. So what he really likes is having 3 guys instead of Luke there. That's what he likes. Okay, so now he has Endor. It's going to be very hard for the opponent to get there. And now he can do some draining. So he just put Zuckuss by himself, and he's assuming that it's okay. So Luke tries to start a battle, tries to grab it. He protected Emperor inside there. He didn't want to lose the Emperor. Okay. But now the battle is going to do nothing, right? So it's good that he grabbed all sections of alert, because the second ability does cancel Rebel's battle game text, but it's not doing a ton of stuff for him. So, all right, so now he has 3 people. Okay. 3 people there, game text restored. So now it's PMJ's turn again. Now you overload, he tracked a destiny, and it's a 0 from something he retrieved earlier. And then boom, right? There goes Luke. Now he force drained right after that. He's going to retrieve. I don't love that. Well, I prefer to lose it, but if you're afraid he could come there, I guess it can make sense too. So now we have to see, what is Logan going to do, right? So Janice again is tracking a destiny. Okay, so now he did have his other tie there. Uses force, retrieve the remaining items here, and he's prepared for this thing just to die, right? He dies, then he can exchange it back for a future turn. But remember, he still has that destiny, that 3,720 to 1, and Luke is dead. So he has Emperor, he has Janice, and he has Brangus, right? So his total is 11 compared to the opponent here. So deploys 2 ships to the Death Star, does lateral damage. Now this thing is naked, has no forfeit, no power. 14 power here. This is going to hurt a lot. And he can track his destiny, so he can track, 6 or just get lucky. It doesn't really matter. And so now he's going to take a ton of damage here. And yeah, you drew a destiny. That's fine. It's good, but it's not enough, right, at this point. So you lose too many cards, you're going to hit the 3,720 to 1, and then you're going to have to lose the difference there, which is going to be a lot. And then you're going to, they just game over, right? Game over, could do nothing there. So very powerful. That's a great example of where numbers can really, really shine well, potentially there. All right, so there's some other games here. Maybe a little bit easier to see mine. This is a game I played with against Captain Killrush. He's one of the people that asked me to play this. We're going to try to go here kind of fast. This particular game, he's playing Hidden Base. I was playing a deck similar to kind of Bastion's deck, with a couple of cards different here. And I'm just, again, I'm just drawing here, right? I'm just drawing the cards I need to do. I wanted, whatever. It's fine. I'm just drawing my cards. I'm getting ready. I'm trying to get the cards I need to counter him. So CNR Fleet Systems, Brangus here, just the bare minimum. And, I'm exchanging docking bays, doing what needs to be done here. Okay, so Getting Masterful Move. He grabbed Masterful Move. I'm getting Monarch. Okay, that's great. Why am I getting Monarch? Because it's powerful, and I know against X-Wing deck it's good. So he tries to grab my Monarch too. Okay, that's fine. He had a ton of cards. I get rid of 4 X-Wings, right? So one of the biggest issues with X-Wing decks is that you want to draw your cards at one time, and if you don't have Yarna, then you're in trouble here. So able to get that. I might have liked to get my Monarch back, but he grabbed it, so I can't do that. All right, so I have Zuckuss, I have Dengar. I love this combo here. It's really nasty, right? Really nasty. So he's deploying somewhere else. Again, what am I doing? I'm waiting for his turn to over. It's my turn. I'm going to drain him. I'm deploying my cards. So in this deck, I have an extra docking base. So I'll go ahead and drain him with, Emperor and Janus. Get the bonus there. Why not? And I'll just follow him, right? I'm just drawing my cards, right? And drawing to have answers to him. I'm trying to get, more ships. I want to, get rid of his land, Lando too, if I can. What else can I do to frustrate my opponent, right? Not going crazy, not freaking out, just, slowly but surely trying to deplete their life force is what you're trying to do here. I'm moving Janus over, getting cards I want to, getting more grabbers, whatever I can find there. He has, okay, so he has still have a lot of X-Wings and, hyper escapes. So I want to have plenty of grabbers for those. And I'm drawing a ton of cards. I mean, I could have drawn too much. I have 26 cards in my hand. I don't care, right? I want to have just the right cards to oppose him. So I tried to alter him, and I successfully altered. I lost 2 force. I don't care. I don't need those 2 guys. Get rid of alter. That way I can force strain a piece later on in life. All wings, grab that. Yeah, spiral. I don't know if that's a great idea. I don't have very much force in hand, but I don't need it, right? Because, I have options here. I have a lateral damage. I'm gonna do some pain here. So this is a great example of Ozzel. Ozzel being 0 makes a huge difference, right? I don't have a ton of force here. There's 6, the Emperor, 2 Emperors does make a difference. I was able to lose the Ozzel and keep that there. And now I can start another battle here, retrieve the Ozzel back. And it tries to hyper escape. Okay, hyper escape. Oh no, he can't hyper escape, sorry. Yeah, he played hyper escape, but he didn't have enough force because of first strike. He needed 1 more force, so he couldn't escape. So that's 8, and then that's GG there, right? So all I was doing was drawing until I got enough cards, and then I used the cards I had in this case. So there's kind of another game played against Matto. You can kind of get a similar idea here, right? So he's playing Quiet Mayan Colony. It's not a great deck in PDS2, but you can play it. And I'm just kind of doing my battle order start here. I'm lucky to have a first strike here. And I'm getting my War Room first because I want the cards here. Pretty much you have to run War Room. You pretty much don't have a choice here. It's just too efficient. I've tried games where you don't have it. But for how this deck is generally designed, you kind of want to have it, even if it's puts you at a slight disadvantage sometimes. Generally not, but sometimes you generally want to have it. So he's deploying tons of cards. He's giving me a ton of force. I've deployed hardly anything, right, comparatively, right? So yeah, I want my Senior Fleet Systems very early. I'm going to deploy that. I should have deployed Unith over here, but basically I'm putting pressure on my opponent. I have 15 force, right? Unless you draw 15 million cards, I am going to try to kill off your guy. So I should put that somewhere else. I'm putting pressure on my opponent. That's what I'm doing. And I'm drawing 50 million cards because I want to have, like Come Here Big Coward. I want to have my beat squad. That's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to get Brangus in my hand. So he deploys, Falcon. He deploys Luke. He's going to try to stop me killing off his cards next turn, which makes sense. And okay, I'll retrieve cards, whatever, and I'll kill him, he'll kill me. All right, that's fine. Lost, that's okay. So I have no coward. Put a Barkwind Dan there. Put a first strike because I don't want him to Grimtosh me later. And I'm trying to get to Brangus, which I finally got. I'm just trying to get to the right cards I need to challenge my opponent, right? I probably could have stopped there, but I want to go further. Okay, fine. You know, you do have to be careful not to overdraw. Okay, so he has two guys there. It's gonna be harder to battle him. I'm gonna do my boba there. Do a forlum there for some reason. Oh yeah, because I want to the combo these two. That makes sense. And do lateral damage. Yeah. On Red Squadron 1, yeah, makes sense. So this is a great example of I should have checked my cards. Yeah, so that was kind of a failure. Lost everything. Okay, but we're okay. Not a big deal. So deploy Emperor, deploy Brangus, deploy Prophetess. I am going to force drain you while I can and just enjoy life. Okay, so you're going to try to drain me those two spots. I don't. Oh yeah, you're trying to cancel outer damage. Yeah, that's fine. You're afraid of me coming back and beating you. That's true. I might do that, but then you kind of go back there. So okay. I use all sections on alert. I am trying to get my cards back into my hand. So I have two docking bays back in my hand. I have a 4 there, so I can lateral damage. I can. All right. All right. So even if I don't end up killing him, right, I'm just doing a lot of damage, right? So, okay, it's not enough to get through his attrition, but I lateral damaged him. So what? You know, he gets no battle loss against me. I'm doing damage to him. I'm doing my stuff. You know, great. Wonderful. Fantastic. So he loses a lot of cards. That's the job, moving Death Star over so that, you know, eventually I can free my Emperor Sword. That's the goal. Okay, so he can drain me for 2. It's fine. Or 1, okay. He wants to shoot my Brangus. He wants to gain a little bit of force back. That's fine. I have a handful of cards to lose. Not a big deal. It's okay. Kill my poor Barkwin Dan. Okay, fine. Get my Imperial Barrier back. Why not? Shoot both my guys, but I take no battle damage, right? So, you know, it doesn't terribly matter. I got one of their guys. Okay, it's fine. All right, so drawing lots of cards. That's what he's doing. I deploy more Jade Invader, and I try to kill him, but he does Path of Least Resistance. And okay, I should have thought about that. That is a very common card for, you know, Quiet Mining Colony. Okay, all right, fine. Moves over there. All section alert. Yeah, I want my docking base back. Absolutely, I'm gonna milk that as much as I can. Okay. So, okay, you're gonna deploy. You have 2 landos and deploy them there. I'm gonna go ahead and just force drain what I can. It's fine. I'll force drain. It's okay. I just want to get you down. That's all I want to do. So, Brangus can fight. I get rid of at least one of you. Pretty much one. I don't have enough destiny. So, one of you, okay. I have poor destiny. Doesn't matter. I don't take battle damage. I get rid of one of your guys. That's my job. All right. So moving up the Death Star a little bit, getting closer so that I can get Zuckuss out of here. Right, if I want to. Barrier Obi-Wan. Gonna alter order and engage. Not sure I needed to do that, but I did anyway. You're gonna try to on the edge. You're gonna try to grab get a little bit of force drain. Okay, that's fine. You can do that because you're in two battlegrounds. Moving Luke over there, but remember, I tracked a 0 from earlier when I kind of retrieved earlier, so I know what's here. So there's that docking bay I got back when I initiated a battle, and then you moved over. I can just wipe you out, and then it was over. Right? Then the opponent gave up. Right? That's what typically happens. So had a battle, got my docking bay back after exchanging it, tracked that docking bay through my deck, wait till it's on top, waited for the right moment to just overload kind of killed, this Luke Skywalker with cannons that wanted to kill my Zuckuss, right? If I didn't have that, then I just move away, right? Or do what I have to do, or start a battle knowing I die. I mean, I have lots of options here, right? I could have started a battle here, and I could have started a battle there. We're in good shape. I really wish it would stop doing that to me. Okay. So, point mining colony. All right, let's do this one. Let's do this replay. All right, so today we're facing Walrus Man with TRM. And he is doing the nudge start. I do not think the nudge start is a great option. It's fun, but against brightness, you really, really, really need your grabbers. And you do not get your grabbers by default with this nudge start. I think this does not work in the modern era as well. So I'm getting War Room, I'm applying brightness here. I'm getting my bonuses, I'm getting my force. He just shuffles me, that's fine. So I'm getting a docking bay, I'm deploying CNR fleet systems here, and I'm just drawing 50 million cards because I can. So I try to alter, and then he tries to use sense to cancel. And then, okay, that's fine. I put alter my thing. So I grabbed a sense. I know I have 50 million senses. So if I grab a sense, that's a good thing. So you're using kind of the haze nudge TRM kind of base here. So he uses Monarch, good. Sorry, he uses Grimtosh, that's good. That slows me down. It's not good enough, but it slows me down. And that's exactly what he should do. So I'm getting my docking bay back. So I lost earlier. Okay, I get it back now. Now I'm drawing again. If he Grimtoshes me again, I can grab it again. That's fine. He's drawing 50 million cards too. Broken concentration. Okay, I'm drawing 50 million cards. I want the cards I want. Now he grabs my altar. Okay, so that means if he grabs my altar, that means his altar is going to get grabbed by his own thing. I'm okay with that. Mild immunity is not the worst thing in the world, to not have. Immunity is not the worst thing in the world to have. So if I'm stopping him from using his altars too, then that's power to me. So I failed there, that's fine. Okay, deploys Luke there. Okay. Deploys Luke there, but in the middle of the battle, guess what I do? I use all sections on alert, and I draw Destiny, and Luke's dead, right? He didn't have first strike, or sorry, draw their fire. It didn't really matter. He didn't have a grabber to grab the thing that mattered. He grabbed the altar instead of the all sections alert. So he deployed Luke. He battles and is dead, right? Luke would have been better over here. At least he could force trade, right? Maybe he could have gotten this guy, but realize I have 2 in my hand, right? I got more than 1 brightness, right? Best thing you could do is say if you fight brightness here and then you hit him, then you could try to out of commission me. Maybe he had out of commission his hand. I don't know. That could have been a decent plan, but I had all sections alert, so he really needed like an Obi-Wan or a buddy with him. So he probably should have waited till he had more guys to attack Brangus and then out of commission it. Would probably been a better idea. But I'm just chilling. So I got a lot of cards here, and now what can I do? I can do that. I can bark one down. What am I going to do? I didn't Monarch him for some reason. I'm not sure why. Whatever. Oh, maybe I draw it at the end. Okay. He's fighting me. He misses his shot. That's the problem with TRM. Okay, you hit Barkwin. My poor Barkwin. He wanted to make it so I couldn't draw a Battle Destiny. That's not a bad plan. But of course, I can... Well, it wouldn't work because I have 2 guys. Okay, so you killed both my guys. I killed your KFC. You try to alter my own thing. Okay, it's fine. You try to alter CNR fleet systems. You're so desperate, but you failed, unfortunately. It's not necessarily a bad idea. It just, the problem is that I can get it back too. That's the issue. But no, I can do Evader here. I can do First Strike here. You didn't have any force there, or he didn't have any force there. So, yeah, you stop some damage to me, but I can just, smack there. And I didn't want to do, right, I didn't want to do kind of my thing here yet, just because, like, I have 2 cards here, so I don't need it yet. It's okay. You know what I mean? So it's all right. Okay, so he's lost 3 mains plus KFC. So you bet shuffle. I grab that just to so I can track my own stuff, and then you do out of commission, and you got Darth Vader with lightsaber out of play. That's not bad. I do have more options though. That's why it's important to have a crew of four ability people. So that was good, but you only have so many of those. So I guess I was a little bit afraid of getting pounced. I could have done there, but again, he kind of gives up, and that's kind of what happens. So what can I say? Oh, and I guess we missed one thing that went very fast. So I monarched him, and I got rid of 2 signals, 2 Jedi Knights. So I think he lost all 3 of his Jedi Knights most likely. He has a Taw's Claw, okay, fine. He has kind of Obi-Wan lightsaber, okay, fine. Not bad things. Just that it's kind of demoralizing when you lose all your mains, and he gave up. That's kind of what happens a lot of these games. All right, so let's do this game. All right, so this game against J-Lock. So here, playing EVO. This deck I'm using is slightly different. Maybe it's not. Yeah, so I'm kind of using it kind of closer to version 1 of Brangus, but with a few kind of V2 ones as well. Like I have Sabak in here, and I have Control and things like that, which I think are really useful. Okay, so he's deploying EBO quickly. He's putting echo based operations pretty quickly. This time I'm a little bit smarter. I put Oneth over here so that you need a spy to attack her. I have 14 force, and okay, I guess you're smart. You deployed a bunch of your guys ahead of time, but you also drew several cards. So you drew 3 cards. So I only need 7 force to use this ability, right? So I try to use set for stun. Yeah, why did I use set for stun? Because I wanted to return Figrin Dan to hand, and then use Oneth to kill, right? And that's another deadly combo. It's one reason why I kind of like using this, even though there's a lot of people trying to counter this with Gunite. If you can use set for stun, return someone to hand, and then kill them, it's just mean. It's just mean, but I failed. He had control. This is a sense deck control, so okay, it's a little bit harder to do that. That's fine. All right, so I got my control back after canceling a sense. Okay, fine. So I got rid of a Captain Han Solo. That's good. Yeah. Lost door controls. Trying to draw Destiny. You drew some bad Destiny. I drew some good Destiny, so I end up actually getting to retrieve a little bit. Okay. He used Grimtosh on me. Good for him. That's exactly what you should do. And then he drew some more cards. That's fine. But guess what I do, right? Well, what's the first thing I do? He had 10 cards in hand. I use 10 force, right? And then I'm going to get his guys. So I got Jedi Knight, Obi-Wan, Hobby, and another Obi-Wan. So I got rid of a lot of his mains. And that's hard to deal with, right? So he does Gunite. This time I got lucky. I altered Gunite. And he's going to deploy his speeder and go over there and hang out. Okay. So what do I want to do? Well, I want to draw 50 million cards. That's what I want to do. So here I'm kind of using kind of the Jabba combo I was talking about earlier, or I'm trying to anyway. His Figrin Dan gets 9 Destiny, and I get 9. We get a tie. And I'm going to exchange a card to get Danger with me. That's good. So CNR Fleet System. So now I think I was a little bit eager here. I really wanted to battle him. I probably should have checked my Destiny first here. What I probably should have done here. Start a battle. And this is kind of a whiff, right? I'm drawing IG-88. I'm drawing Baron. I'm drawing Vader, right? I got 3 Battle Destiny. I got 3-1. So that was pretty sad here. But, I'm still lots of power above him. Okay, I'll lose Ozzel. That's fine. He has to lose 5 guys, so he opts to lose Zev. Okay, so I'm still not doing bad here. He's going to wager, fine. He's going to win this wager this time. So he gets an Obi-Wan back, that's fine. He's going to deploy some systems, deploy Lando. He tries to do an Ice Storm against me. Well, I happen to have a control in my hand, so that's good, right? That's one of the few times that actually worked. And he's deploying, Torn Far with another rogue here. He has some immunity to attrition. I barrier her, so no battle at me with her this turn. And then now it's, now it's my turn. I start again, and I guess he gives up. So I guess he feels the writings on the wall. Could be. Could be. I mean, I could have, deployed this, retrieve 3 force, battled. I could have done a Mara Jade, add more power here, battled. I certainly had options. Lateral damage would have been a very, very potent combo with this end. So I 2 places to battle would have been hurting this case. So that's kind of that there. So if we're talking about variations, right? We talked a little bit earlier about kind of different cards to play. I mentioned the Plaza combo. Here's one deck that uses the Plaza combo. The idea here in this one is that you're trying to draw the Plaza, like I said, put a Vader here, have a Saber here if you can, and defend this area, and then you will never deploy this, but what you will do is you will kind of control this area, retrieve this indefinitely, in addition to kind of put all sections alert. Otherwise, it's mostly the same as other Brangus decks, right? Wormtime did a version of this where you did always think with your stomach. Still a very good card. Why? Because, well, if you use this card, cancel Force Drain, you can get it back with Brangus on a future turn, right? And use it again. So you use that on the turn after that. You can't use 2 the same turn because it's a unique thing, but still very good. I opted to do Failure with the Cave since that's kind of what Wormtime did in his deck. If you don't like Failure with the Cave, then put something else there. But I think if you're expecting Mind What You've Learned, this could potentially be kind of a decent version to play. Give yourself a system and a site to kind of force drain kind of 4 at a turn and give yourself some retrieval and kind of use Oneth to kill off, because Mind What We've Learned doesn't use a lot of Gunite. And you might be able to kill a whole bunch of the guys, beforehand. So it could be good against those types of decks. Could do a similar version of this one. Instead of doing the Plaza, you could just do the Casino. And Dr. Torch has used versions of this in various ways. But the idea is, you'll go here, you'll put either Brangus, or you put Bark Wendan, or put Lando. Ideally, you would put them inside of an AT-AT, because it's hard to hit AT-ATs. And Lando inside of an AT-AT cannot be converted by the light side Lando. And so what you do is that during your move phase, he would step out the AT-AT, he'd place a Bach, and he'd move back in. And the same principles apply, right? So you will try to use Masterful Move. You will try to then use Force Lightning. Then you'll have your 11. Now, if you draw Destiny or you get lucky and you have like a 7, for instance, followed by a 4, you can use that. Sometimes naturally through the game, battling, whatever, you're able to get it. But, outside of just battling, you can do it. You can do it this way. So if they grab your Cloud City Sabak, then just use Trooper Sabak. If they grab your Trooper Sabak, use Cloud City Sabak. So is it nice to retrieve from Casino? Absolutely. Do you have to do it? No, right? Sometimes you'll find games where someone uses Out of Commission, right? They'll use Out of Commission, not Dark Side. Use Out of Commission, and they might actually get your Brangus, which is annoying. The idea is that you'll have a Lando here to help you get more, but sometimes the Lando will be converted, or maybe Lando gets lost, so you'll have Bark One. So the idea is you have 3 different gamblers to try to take advantage of this text. You have 2 AT-ATs to try to protect them and get them in there. And you have the standard, if they bother you, trample them. So you can have 1 AT-AT hanging out at the Casino, and 1 AT-AT, maybe another kind of exterior site the opponent has, if you need it. So you're trying to aim for that kind of flexibility. Standard 3 Brangus, 2 Sayer, put all sections alert. One note here, right? All of these previous decks, like a lot of these decks that you'll see, like you find it, right? So he used 3 Death Star docking bays. he used 3 Death Star docking bays. That is actually not the best way to run it. Why? Because all section alert says Death Star and title. Death Star 2 docking bay also has Death Star and title. What you don't want to happen is you put all sections on alert, and then you return 2 Death Star docking bay 327s to your hand, and then your opponent rim toshes you, right? So when Bastion did this in his previous games, he was vulnerable, right? When PMJ did this previous games, he was vulnerable. You don't need to have 3 of these. You start with this. The best thing to do is to have 1 Death Star 2 docking bay. You can't deploy it. You're not going to. And then 2 Death Star docking bay 327. You start with 1 and you draw another one. This way, you're not worried about getting grim-toshed. Not a very high likelihood of chance, but it's better this way. So everyone going forward, free tech. I've told this to a couple people before. Some of you see me play. This is how all decks going forward should do. It's a minor optimization, but there's no reason not to do it. Additionally, we have Igar, so it's additional Battle Destiny inside of Tempest 1 if you can grab the 2-card combo. But I think most of the kind of the Brangus things that you want to do, you can do here. Are there things that this thing sacrifices? Sure, of course. There's you're not getting 3,720 to 1. You're missing kind of the counter assault. Counter assault is kind of missing. So again, you kind of have to pick your poise, what you want to do. Maybe you're like, I don't need this thing, get rid of it. Okay, fine. Maybe you want a point man, right? Point man would be very nice in many cases. So you have to kind of make your own choice about what's the most important thing that you want to do. So other people have ideas. So for instance, this guy had an idea for kind of a version of bombers with them. So the idea is that you start with planetary subjugation instead. He had 4 docking bays, right? So he had 3 extra. Not sure if you need 3, but okay, he wanted 3. That's fine. And he had, 2 All Strikes and Alert, 3 Brangus, pretty standard. He has 1 Beatstick Vader. That's good. And 1 U3PO. I'm not sure you need this. I'd rather have a second guy, in all honesty, like more ground power, like a Simalu or a Janus. So deck is not perfect, but I mean, what's he trying to do? Well, he's trying to drain you in space. He's trying to, have Brangus occupy one of these. And so he's trying to make it so that he can retrieve a ton of force if he needs to and just make your life difficult. And if you try to battle him, he's trying to get an all-powered weapons. So could this deck do well? Absolutely. I think it's a little too focused, but, if your opponent has like an Endor or they give you a Tatooine, so this is partially made with like Watch Your Step in mind, or Watch Your Step by default, right? Watch Your Step. What they like to do is, yeah, that's the wrong thing. Watch Your Step is they like to start out with the Tatooine system. So you start out with the Tatooine, right? Well, what can you do? Start with Tatooine and the Cantina, right? And 94, right? Well, what can you do there? Well, if you know your opponent's playing Watch Your Step, then you can quite easily, put, one of your bombers, any one of these, to Tatooine, and you can bomb, these sites, kind of the next turn, and that could be a big ouch for them. So I made my own version of this. I think this is a little more feasible, flexible, right? Why? Well, like I mentioned earlier, this has the intruder missile. Why? Well, like I said, the only weakness to this is really its Cloud City Sabacc. So if you know your opponent's playing, an intruder missile, okay, one way you could screw them over is to play Cloud City Sabacc and win, and you could potentially, steal their starship weapon. That's the only way I know to steal a starship weapon. Most players don't do that. It's fine. You have concussion missiles to shoot people regularly, and concussion missiles have bonuses with other Scimitar Squadron ties, and you have proton bombs. And so you can use your Dreadnought to move your bomber with your proton bombs across planets if you need to. So it starts with Endor. This one starts with Tatooine. You could alternatively start with Hoth. And then if you need to bomb their places, so if you know they're playing EBO, like most EBOs use Hoth. That's the only reason why. But if they're a TRM deck, maybe you put Hoth here instead of Tatooine kind of thing. But I think this would be a fun deck. You still have the kind of Blizzard 2, and you have the ability to trample with the 7. So you would still use your trample ability for that. You still have kind of much of the standard fighting crew here, a little bit of flawless marksmanship here with a little bit of relentless pursuit. So normally lateral damage has counters, but this one, relentless pursuit, there's no counter to this. So if you hit them, they can die. You can reduce their power to 0, and they can't stop you other than sense. So this is probably not as powerful as other options, but I think if you know your opponent is, say, playing like a Prophet deck, for instance, so if they're playing Prophet, this could be a fun way to kind of like target the audience chamber and make that unusable. So they need to free Han as quick as possible, or maybe put, kind of Mara Jade and Vader, and you sacrifice them to get rid of like the frozen Han. Could be potential. Probably needs more optimization talk. But it's another way to play this kind of deck. Joe Horby, how do we get in this mess? A long time ago, had an idea for ROPS. So this was kind of his deck tech he put a long time ago. What's the idea? Well, basically, whenever you flip ROPS, you can use 2 force to get a card from your hand. Well, what would you get from there? Well, it could be anything you wanted to, but it could be a docking bay, and that docking bay could be immediately used by Brangus. So in this case, what's he doing here? Well, he's, instead of having 3 Brangus, he has 2. Instead of having 2 all such alert, he has 1. So he's being a little bit less able to use that, but he's able to kind of flip a little bit faster. He's going for the Vader, I want to beat, you are beating you and kill you mid-battle, or, protect from uncontrollable fury. And no, overall, I think I like it. I think it should probably have trample. This was made, 25 years ago, but I think, has a lot of solid ideas here. I made my own version. I think having search and destroy is really good, so we want to keep that. I think being able to reuse always in your stomach is a nice idea. Why? Because this deck's a little bit slower, right? I don't have all the cards here. And I want to take my time, right? So I like the idea of having a 7 and using a 7 with set for stun or a 7 for trample, I think is very powerful. And so I think, being able to get 2 battle destiny with Marquand and Watts is pretty good. Alternatively, you could kind of do kind of the Tempest 1 combo. But that's what I went for in this kind of sample idea deck. So 3 grabbers as standard braggness. Maybe you want 2 to fit some more Imperials. So I think it's a little bit lighter on Imperials than you'd like to be. But I think it, could still be kind of competitive. I think it has a lot of the standard defenses. It doesn't have everything we want, right? We would love to have like Imperial Decree. We'd love to have some altars. We'd love to have Overseeing It Personally or Lost R2 or, any of these like ability. So it does sacrifice a little bit for braggness. I'm not sure it's the best braggness thing, but it could certainly surprise your opponent. One thing I like about this is because usually people play ROPS and they have no ability to retrieve force. Whereas this deck is like, no, I can put CNR Fleet Systems, I can deploy my ties, I can use the all sections on alert combo, and I can do that. You'll also notice in this deck that I'm using 2 Death Star 2 docking bays. Why? Because I want to do the standard deploy 1 docking bay, Death Star 2 docking bay, and then I put a guy here for mobilization points, and then I transfer over to the spaceport. So I have 1 regular Death Star docking bay. So I kind of do the reverse here. You want to try very hard not to deploy Death Star docking bay 327. It's much better to have this, generally speaking. But yeah, I think this will be fun. This may not be the best ROPS version or the best braggness version, but it is some variety to kind of catch out your opponent. Bring before me is another area which you could use Brangus for, right? So what am I doing here? This version, I'm trying to go for an ability to get to 3 sites. So I'm having 2 docking bays by default. My desire is that I would have kind of a Blizzard 2 here instead. And that way he couldn't, suffer, like Lost in the Wilderness. We don't want to have any of our cards lost in the wilderness. And then I will put like a second at Presence of the Forest at this docking bay if I need to, right? So we're trying to give the opponent as few icons as possible while making it possible for us to occupy 3 battlegrounds to satisfy Honor of the Jedi. And we're doing our modified braggness. So I opted to keep 2 all sections while having 2 Brangus Glee. I tried to maintain I have a 7, so I can still trample you, so I can still set for stun you. And I opted to keep, Overload. Obviously, in this version, we do make sacrifices, right? So there's no altar here, right? There's no sense here, right? There's no 3,720 to 1 here. There's no counter assault here. So there's certainly things that we chose not to use that we could have used. We don't have numbers protection here in this deck, which is, oh no, I guess we do. No, we don't. Yeah, because I don't have it here. Yeah, so are there weaknesses in the deck? Sure. Is this beatable? Absolutely, it's beatable. But I think, again, your opponent's not expecting to have Brangus here. You can have Brangus. And whenever you put the Emperor at the throne room with Emperor's power, suddenly, Dengar can fight by himself and draw a Battle Destiny and automatically kill something, right? Suddenly, Danik Jericho can draw a Destiny on his own, and he can, kill a Jedi Luke who might, be bothering you or whatever, or someone else. So there's I think there's potential with this idea, and I think we've explored further. And so maybe there's some better ways to decide which cards to keep and which cards to get rid of, and whatnot. But certainly branches can go into other deck types. It's just that the issue is, of course, is that because it's not set your course for Alderaan, you have to mainly draw into your docking bays. But what do I like? Bring them before me, because it has so many docking bays, right? You start off, with 2/4. It's better not give your opponent 2/4. So because you're occupying so many docking bays, you're getting a lot more force. So you can draw into your docking bays that you don't have deployed here much easier. And I think that can make up for not being able to retrieve them from your deck potentially. Needs more testing, needs more verification. Can you do with Hunt Down? Absolutely. So similar idea. So opted for Hunt Down dueling in this one. Similar idea with Presence of the Force. We wanted to get to 3 locations as quickly as possible. In this case, we still like Death Star Docking Bay. The disadvantage, of course, is we're not immune to battle damage. The advantage is we can force drain there. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to occupy Cloud City, occupy Death Star, and trying to occupy, Executor, basically, or another opponent's site. We'll use our Presence of the Force. If we absolutely have to, we'll Presence of the Force at Walker Limit if we have to. Or if we need to, we'll Presence of the Force at Executor Docking Bay. What do we got to do to get to a third site? And while trying to give our opponent as little need as possible, if we lose Vader's Obsession, if we kind of lose Circle is now complete, we're going to try to use Brangus to get it back. We're going to try to keep our extra 7 as an extra Visage of the Emperor, right? There's lots of Hunt Down decks use an extra Visage. Well, here we can actually use that extra Visage if it doesn't get destroyed, right? We can use it to trample. We can use it for set to stun. So we're trying to keep this combo potential. You could, of course, opt to get rid of this combo potential for something else, right? It's kind of what it does. They do a focused attack. It does give up. I would love to have kind of more guys here, but it's Hunt Down. What can you say? So could this be a good Hunt Down basis? Could be. I don't know. Needs to be tested more, but it's an idea. This deal is getting worse all the time, so you can use this base. What I like about this is you can start with something like the Downtown Plaza instead of having to retrieve it, and then you can get kind of, Cloud City and Bespin, and you can naturally benefit from Wakilumi with more ties, right? So I opted for these ones. Maybe I should have done a different Obsidian 1 here instead of Obsidian 7, so I could draw a Battle Destiny maybe. But yeah, you can retrieve a lot via this. You deploy one Cloud City East platform, and the other one you just lose so that you can retrieve it here. You have the standard, all section alerts. So we did kind of a mini Brangus. We did 2 Brangus and 1 all sections here. I allow myself to trample. You're trying to stick to these 2 sites to use Cloud City occupation. Weaknesses, of course, there's weaknesses, right? These are all exterior sites, right? You're trying to use Lord Vader here. What can happen to exterior sites is, of course, you are vulnerable to speeders, right? So Rebel Snow Speeder can be your enemy, right? If you have a ton of these. So no, it's not perfect. No, it's not invincible. But I think, this has potential. I don't think it's as strong as some of the other Brangus. I don't think it's stronger than, Set Your Course for Alderaan Brangus, because immediately you're vulnerable here. So you probably want like Brangus hiding, on the Death Star 2 docking bay in this version here. So you can kind of track your cards appropriately, but it could kind of be a fun variant potentially. All right, so we talk about Dagobah Cave, so you don't have to start with an objective at all, right? You can start with Dagobah Cave directly. Who needs an objective, right? And then you can deploy Death Star docking bay. Then you can deploy East platform similar to Hunt Down, but you don't have to use so many cards. The advantage of this is you can use Brangus plus a few more cards since you're not giving them, Alderaan for free. Since you're not using kind of the Death Star huge thing, you're using your docking bays. You're gonna aim to be here, and then at the Executor, if you need to with your final presence, or if you need to occupy Endor, you can do that. What I like about this version is, of course, is you can use Search and Destroy. And you can have a lot of the fun Brangus goodies that you can't fit all into one deck. So I opted not to do Counter Assault this deck. But, if you think your opponent is kind of vulnerable to that, then you could try to queue. You could mix cards in and out of here. But I think the nice thing about Dagobah Cave is you literally just start with more cards, versus Bring Before Me. Bring Before Me, there's kind of a slight disadvantage because you have to start your Destiny. You have to start Insignificant Rebellion. So there's just, you have more cards to include in your deck if you want to of your choice. So I think that's cool. Now, there's other people that had other ideas for Brangness that kind of came later. Reflections 2 came. Wallen had his own ideas, so he really liked doing 2 control and set for stuns. He liked doing 2 sniper first strike. He liked doing 2 just to kiss a Wookiee, which Bastion in his first deck. I don't think this deck is great. I don't think it's terrible, right? It's Brangness, so Brangness is flexible by default. I think you put a nice wish list of cards here. But, his idea was you just have extra docking bays of different types, and you could pitch them if you wanted to, if you didn't need them. Now, Bastion himself, later with Reflections 2, he wanted to make another version of that, even though he was suffering from Watch Your Step. So he changed a few cards, and you can, the best way to view this is from the standpoint of his version 1 of this deck. So he still had 3, put all section alert, but he did kind of control and set for stun, which if you only want 1 set for stun, it makes sense. And he opted to do 3 Vaders. He incorporated his Emperor and Janus this time by default. Did Shizor, and Shizor's not bad. When your alien leader adds a Battle Destiny, so I like that when these 2 guys get together, extra Battle Destiny, that's great. And he opted to have kind of 2 battlegrounds to start with, and he kind of removed one hot site from here. So I think overall, still a relatively solid deck. I think it still need a little bit more optimization, but obviously, he optimized more of the time. Well, you can see he went from 0 grabbers to 2 grabbers with this. So some incremental obvious improvements when he did Reflections 2. Now, I would say if you want to make Reflections 2 deck from this, you should probably use his second version as a base. And so when you think about it, let's kind of look briefly what he had there. So he had things like Baron Soon to Fail. He deploys -1 to his Saber 1, right? So it'd be 2 for this, and then it'd be 2 for this because he deploys -1. So that's 4 force. Well, an easy optimization, right, is, look, Shizor costs 4 force, and this costs, Shizor deploys -3 board. Okay, so this costs 3, and this effectively costs 1. So this is 4 force, 4 force. The difference is, of course, is that Baron, right, he's good in space, but on the ground he's just a power 2 guy. So he doesn't do much for you. He's forfeit 5, whereas Shizor is forfeit 6. And when he's battle, he can, draws the destiny on his own. He makes your opponent have to have a 6 or more. So he's good on the ground as well as space. Only thing you're, losing here is you're not adding, one total battle destiny with this guy. You're losing on that. But of course, Virago, right? What if you don't have Shizor? What if Shizor dies? Well, Virago plus a Sword or Shield is four ability, right? So the ship does something on its own, even without Shizor. And that's really good, right? So I think swapping those 2 out makes a lot of sense. If you look at that, he used Colonel David John, right? Cost 4 force, power +2 at an exterior planet site, and draws Battle Destiny, 1 Battle Destiny, but otherwise there. That's not bad. But if you compare it to this guy, right? Well, 6 power and draws 1 Battle Destiny anywhere. And he can fly in space. He can add 3 power. So if you want him to power your Virago, he can. If you want extra pilot for Zuckuss, he can do it. He's flexible, and he costs 4. He costs, pretty much the same thing, and he's better at places other than, exterior ground sites. Now, If your opponent has a lightsaber and exterior sight, okay, you could argue that, maybe David John, but I would say in most cases, 6 forfeit versus 5 forfeit. In most cases, this guy is just straight up better. So you probably want to use them. Arica, right? Well, most of the time, Mara Jade, you're not deploying to a ship. You could deploy a ship this version. This version you can, but if your opponent is draining you early, you want to stop that. This gives you options. So she can still find the ground. She won't have power 6 with the Emperor, but that's okay. That's all right. In most cases, right? In most cases, I think that's fine. So, comparatively, right, I think that's an easy swap. Control and set for stun. Personally, I like having 2 of those, right? And, having control, leaving it there, not giving up on that, I think. But, having Gravity Shadow, I think, is good. I think having, lateral damage is good because you don't want watch your step people running away, or you want to make it difficult, or you want to track your destiny and kill them, and you want to do lateral damage to try to kill them too, right? And so having both of these space package items gives you that flexibility, right? Also, because Ponda Baba kills things that is hit, you can combine this with Dengar. He shoots twice, so you get these 2 guys together, and you can track a couple of your destinies here, and you go bam, 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 bam. Another thing you can do, if it gets towards the end game, you really just want your opponent to lose force. Well, guess what, right? So the Hollow Theater gives you extra generation, which will help you if Watch Your Step isn't flipped, but you can deploy Visage of the Emperor as your 7th if you want to, right? So you'll lose a force, but you'll both be losing force each turn. And that will work even with Honor the Jedi because of No Escape. So No Escape is pretty much an auto-include because it's a mini Brangus, right? You play this card to get the top card of a reserve deck, right? So it's very hard to argue not to use this card. It's just good. And so you use this strategically when you need to get another card. So you can use this card if you want to control and set for stun again, right? You can use this as many times as you want to. You can use this if you want to get your Force Lightning back. You can use this if you need a Gick or you want to make sure they can't run away from you, from No Rebels Won't Escape Us. So I think from the perspective of, minor changes, I think kind of this version makes sense. Why 2 of these? Well, just because when Watch Your Step flips, you're going to lose 1 force. So, it's nice to have 2 of these to have this force. You don't have to do Visage. You could get rid of this and just leave Visage alone. Go back to Mournful Roar. But I thought, just kind of an end game thing to kind of ping them to death and you. But you have options here, right? You have options to survive the ping. I think it's neat to do that with something other than Hunt Down, as I think. And you don't require battlegrounds or anything else to do it. It just happens. In addition to Trooper Spock. So that's my recommendation for what you could do, or suggestion, or idea, or however you want to take it. So I think this could be developed further, but I think it's a decent base here. So talking about CNV, what'd you do there? Well, CNV, we have a couple of interesting cards here, right? So we have, Imperial Artillery, which suddenly means we have a new way to ping our opponents. So in this case, I opted to get rid of Visage. I said, okay, let's do Artillery, and then let's have a gun. Well, what is this gun? This sawed-off blaster means you can shoot people at adjacent sites, same site, and they fire repeatedly. Awesome. Which means you can deploy this on Ponda Baba himself, or someone else, another war if you want to. And, if they are, shooting people, you can kind of instantly kill them. And you can use this as a way to just kind of ping 1 damage around. Additionally, because we have unsalvageable, meaning that if they have an unpiloted starship, so there's tons of, Red 5s or Outriders, whatever, in Reflections 2 and above, well, you can use Set for Stun, return that pilot to their hand, and then unsalvageable the ship. It's a deadly combo, right? Get unsalvageable later turn with Janice, repeat. Control Set for Stun, return the pilot to the hand, unsalvageable again. Can be very mean, and I think it could be very effective in your games. I looked at the cards there. It's hard for me to justify them personally. Maybe you guys find a gem in the other classic Novi cards, but I think if I were going to play classic Novi, I might start with something like this and see how it goes. Now, Tatooine came out 2001, and Bastion and other people had ideas for how they would do kind of back in the Premiere Tatooine format. So kind of look what he says here. Kind of here's what Bastion thought. So take advantage of, of Darth Maul, and, use kind of the Visit of the Emperor. And if you want to, you can deploy him here to the holotable and drain, or you can, use him just to track destiny, whatever. So you're trying to win the race. You have Watto's box here, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to get to the highest point as you can. You're using pod racer collision. You're losing one force to return, the cards from your opponent back to their hands if necessary, to try to ensure that you win when you're ready. And when you do win, eventually it's going to be kind of 11 total from Boonteeth pod race, because it's going to be 6 plus 5. So they lose 11, and you'd retrieve 11. And he has a lot of the same, things. He has, 2 extra docking bays, and you could also deploy Visage to the conference room if you wanted to make them ping that way, if that would be better, or you can just drain at the holotable. Up to you what you think is best. There's a standard Vader beat stick if you need to. Ponda Baba, Dr. Evazon beat stick, and you can kind of drain, grab people at IG8 as normal. 3 ships, a little light in my opinion. He kind of dropped trying to use Wakilumi. I guess maybe it's not necessary. You're retrieving 11 cards once per game. Maybe that's fine. That's what he did. Another person, Charlie Heron had his own idea for how to do this. So he had his own version of this. He had more pod racer collisions. He had more docking bays to kind of switch around. He also liked the idea of kind of using, Visage of the Emperor to ping them, because it works with no escape. And he had a little bit more kind of, blocking force drains, and a little bit of kind of, this is some rescue. I think he probably should have tried to use unsalvageable. I think unsalvageable would have been a better choice, but I don't think that card existed yet, because this is in July and Reflections 3 came out in October, I think, or something. So don't think it was good enough, but if you're going to update this deck, I'd probably try to do that. And of course, you have the anti-back to tank. So I think that's going to be me in its own way. Then we had Mr. Chris Gogolin, and he had his own version of kind of Premiere through Reflections 3. Not technically Thief Palace, because Thief Palace wasn't out yet. But what did he do? Well, he used Darth Vader lightsaber and Darth Maul lightsaber as beat sticks. He also opted to go for pod racing. He also opted to go for pod racer collision. He did not give up on using Put All Section Alert, which I praise him on trying to do that. He packed a couple of the counters, Barrier to Trap, Smokescreen. That's good. Fallen Portal. That's a great counter for what the light side likes to do. And he kind of kept his space package a little higher, so he opted to use, Tatooine and the Cantina, so he's able to drain at multiple locations until, we get there. He did not use Watto's box. I'm not entirely sure why, but he opted not to do that. I guess he wanted different cards. But it does, P59, lots of ways to draw Battle Destiny and beat up the opponent. And what can you say? I think it might be worth testing a version of that in a Decipher Cards Only kind of game. I think it might be effective. Probably needs some updates of some kind. So if you're playing against Brangus and you want to beat Brangus, the question is, you need to understand what the standard deck has and maybe some alternate deck has. So if the Brangus is using numbers, the simplest thing to have is Insight serves you well. One reason why I'm keen to potentially get rid of this in some decks is just because this is a very common card. Most light side decks, the PDS2 era, use. Now in future eras, they use a little bit less. Reflections 2, they probably use it a little bit less. CNV maybe a little bit less, except they have the combo cards, so probably not. Just a very common counter, but to be super safe, you probably want to have this, right? Counter Assault, a little bit harder to use sometimes. If you're playing a deck with a lot of like speeders or X-Wings or non-unique aliens, or you're trying to drive out a lot of power, Counter Assault can get you, right? If he can track a 7, he can get you. So it's a hit, straight up cancels Counter Assault, right? This works really well with Hidden Base, because it'll naturally be in the air. You might want to cancel its worse. You might want to cancel Talon Roll, right? Those are things. You might want to cancel Limited Resources. Scanning Crew is not common anymore. But those are all good things to cancel. It's hard to use this outside of a Hidden Base deck. Maybe in My Way of Learn deck, because that tends to use a lot of It Could Be Worse. So if you want to be super safe, you'd include this potentially. Overload, there's no direct counter except if you're doing a attack run deck or have a attack run there. Whereas if you deploy this to Death Star Trench, proton torpedoes with overload. Proton torpedoes aren't great, so it's we're unlikely to see those used a lot. But if you really have to have your proton torpedoes, you could do attack run even if you don't want to blow up the Death Star. So it is an option. Monic, you could use Yarna, right? You gotta occupy 2 battlegrounds, which can be hard, but if you do, you are immune if you have 12 cards. Trample, there's no direct thing other than if you're inside of an enclosed vehicle, with ability, then they can't trample you. All right, and of course, traditional Brangus does have one altar, having wise advice, do or do not. Very simple combo to defeating this. It's not invincible, right? Because they can get it back later or try to retrieve cards, get it later, but it could help them. Ellis Hellrot, not used very much, but potentially, if used Insurrection, it's not as convenient to use this. Quite a mercenary. It will straight up kill anyone that uses this. This is often a card that gets cut, I'll be honest with you. It's hard to use, and your opponent can kind of counter it easily. But if you knew they're using LSL running and there's a chance they use it, then quite a mercenary could you could kind of bait them and use quite a mercenary. There are a lot of cards that don't have direct counters, right? Like All Section Alert, except for Stun, Trooper Sabak have no counter. The only way you can directly counter those is to use Sense. And strictly speaking, it's unlikely if and when Brangus does this. So yes, indeed. But yeah, you're unlikely to be able to get a counter for everything, right? So realistically speaking, you need grabbers. The best grabbers are what you're trying to push on us. Simply because if and when he does all sections of alert, you're able to grab that and a future one, right? What you don't want to have happen is you grab one section of alert with a grappling hook and then he has another one. Is it likely there's 2 Trooper Sabaks or 2 Set for Stuns or 2 Tramples or 2 Monarchs or 2 Overloads or whatever? Probably not. But you don't want to be in that situation. I would say if you know you're facing against Brangus, like you're 99% sure, you could potentially have 5 cards. It's hard to fit those there, but they could be good. If you notice all the playthroughs of Brangus by other people, including me, right, what are you doing? You're always drawing 50 million cards, right? So Grimtosh is a good way to slow them down. You could potentially do 2 Grimtoshes. Grimtosh could be grabbed, but it's nice if they grab Grimtosh instead of something else. So you can also try head faking like like Brangus, right? So if you use too many Grimtoshes and you try to use things like Vith Shuffle, right? Things like Vith Shuffle, then maybe you're able to get what you really want to get through it, like maybe out of commission, right? You really want to get out of commission, right? If they can't stop out of commission, you can really put a dent in Brangus, right? You can kind of do those kind of things. Or like maybe a retrieval deck, so maybe you have on the edge, or maybe you have off the edge, right? Kind of thing. So maybe on the edge, off the edge. So maybe you're able to secure 2 battlegrounds, and maybe if you can loop on the edge or off the edge, maybe you can win. And so you love for him to grab other things. Aim high can be really good because if you're retrieving all the time, like all section alert you're retrieving, or they're deploying kind of the the sword and shield, with Cinar Fleet systems, they're getting 3 and 3, with Cinar Fleet. Making them pay for that force can make the difference between being able to attack you and retrieve the same turn. That can definitely slow them down and help you. Anger, Fear, Aggression can be good, right? So these are 2 Turley decks, right? So yes, often Brangus uses Projective Telepathy. That's a very common card, a way to deal with things. But if you grab their Projective Telepathy, well then, your future Anger, Fear, Aggressions can go through, right, potentially. And similarly, after an Anger, Fear, Aggression goes through, that could be per Dr. Torch a great time to do Stone Pile, right? So if you use Stone Pile, you can potentially grab. So like right after all sections on alert, right after they retrieve that or near after whatever, if you Stone Pile, you can get some key cards, right? You can maybe you can grab their, Vader with Saber, right? Maybe you can grab their, their Zuckuss, right? Maybe you can grab some key cards and their ability to counter beat you is not very high. So yes, it's random, but this could, you could end up, getting, some potent cards there as well. Um, Other things to think about, of course, is, like Brangus doesn't tend to use a ton of ability cards. It's mostly interrupts. So what does that mean? Well, it means that Civil Disorder is potentially a killer, right? Because they'll be pinged to a turn, and they don't have enough ability to really kind of stop that. So Civil Disorder can kind of help. So if you think about, kind of set for stun, well, what's the best way to avoid set for stun? Well, if you have a speeder, well, I don't care if you set for stun me, right? Set for stun me doesn't matter. Or if I'm using an X-Wing, um, and I have, a lot of X-Wings, you can't set for stun if there's no one there, kind of thing. Or if you kind of have like just an excessive amount. So let's say like you had like Wedge, you had Wedge, and let's say you had Tycho in his ship, and let's say you had, Rue in his ship, and let's say you had like, Lando or the General Calrissian, I guess you would want to call him, General Calrissian. Well, it's unlikely they'll be able to do two set for stuns, but maybe you could be even, more super care. Maybe, you'll have knee and numb too, right? So if you have a whole bunch of people and a whole bunch of people, then it's hard for them to get two set for stuns off. And as long as you have ability 7 total from who's remaining, you could potentially do well. Obviously, Gunite, right, is a good counter to have in case they have, Miss Oneth. And, that would protect you against that if that Brangus version is using that card, right? So those are, some potential ways. Obviously, there's that one card where it is Destiny less than 4 sites. And it's that light side card, and it's from this one right here. So hope she's all right. Could help you potentially, if you're able to control maybe your site and the Death Star docking bay. And also, of course, think about like the Emperor, right? Emperor Palpatine has this issue where he can't deploy to a location by himself, right? Well, if the opponent's there. So if you occupy the Death Star docking bay and you can hold it, then he can't really go there to kind of frustrate your plan. So if you occupy the sites, then this card kind of becomes a dead card, except for like deploying as fodder in space, for most of those things. So those are some potential things to think about, if you're kind of facing against brightness. So one deck that could potentially do well as brightness is this one, is Dylan's deck from last year. Why? Well, it's got 2 it's a hit, and that would help you against counter assault. It has lots of X-wings, which means that there's no like set for stun, and it has a hyper escape, okay, and the PDS2 version doesn't have Rebels One escape bus, but he has lots of potential to do it. You don't have to deploy your X-wing laser cannons, or maybe you do so sparingly. If Brangus does fight you, then you can try to Legendary Starfighter one of them, and you can try to make it so that they, kind of pass away. So, I think if you played this kind of version of Hidden Base and you stuck to maybe 1 or 2 systems, being very cautious, he has Gunite as well, I think you could do well. You just have to be very careful that things like, Luke and Vader could be killed from overload, X-Wing laser can be killed from overload. Whatever you do, don't put Legendary Starfighter on the same X-Wing that has a laser cannon, unless like you're sure that kind of overload is at the very bottom of the deck or something like that. I think this deck needs another grabber, but I think at the very least you could grab all sections. So this one could potentially do well. PMJs could potentially do well. Why do I say that? Well, because it's a hit, like a counter sense. It has a couple grabbers, 3 would be better, but it has a little bit. It has sense, so it has annoying interrupts. You can deal with them. and you can go to Tybrin, and you can exchange, on the edge as needed, right? So you use on the edge, you can sacrifice 3 cards. So if you are able to track, let's say you're 6, then you can kind of frustrate him, and you could make it so it's hard for him to do stuff. You would need to be careful about, again, your lightsabers or your cannons, because he could potentially overload those. Um, and if he grabs your senses, he can stop them. So, this is a deck where you might try to, bait him into like grabbing kind of your few maneuvers, or bait him to grabbing your altar, or bait him to grabbing kind of your weapon levitation. I think it could do well. And I think the same thing applies where you're going to really want to consolidate your ships on one system, and then maybe consolidate your guys on Cloud City here. And, generally speaking, make it difficult for him to come back. I think this deck could really use out of commission, but I think you could modify this to you could switch out a card to do that potentially. But I think this one has potentially a decent chance, and it could do well. It has the standard. Well, it has two. It has 2 places to drain here, of significance. Like Kessel and Kifex, and then I think Tybrin in a pinch you can do it. Also can retrieve a lot with our most desperate hour, and yeah, I think this one has potential. I think PMJ / How We Get This Mess's Profit is potentially good. Why? Because it has Civil Disorder, so you can occupy the docking bay. You can occupy Tatooine Jabba's palace. If he wants to fight you, you can use Fallen Portal and have a decent chance of killing him with one of your 6s here, right? And you can do ping damage. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 people to do ping damage from. And if you're conscientious, you could potentially deploy Luke and kill off the Emperor and the Death Star, depending where you go. If you need to, you could deploy Bausch to the Death Star and fight, kind of maybe with a Luke there or something there if you needed to in the War Room. So I'd love to see more grabbers. One grabber is really not ideal. I'd really love to see more, but it does have, it could be worse. It does retrieve a lot in the beginning, and he's going to have trouble fighting off kind of your swarm of speeders there where you are. So I think this one also has potential for pinging if you do it right. Also, of course, that even if he has the Emperor, at the Death Star, that doesn't help him avoid this ping damage. So I think this deck does have potential as Grimtosh 2 to slow them down. So I think that's good. Also, order to engage, start a battle, you could force them to fight you there, and then you could try to track your destiny, try to track a 6, so you kill off maybe a Janus or whoever is at the Death Star, and try to kind of shut that down as much as possible. So potentially there. A little bit worried about Kashyyyk and draining there, but it is kind of what it is with this deck. So there was a game that was posted, a Reflections 2 modified version. These are the cards that were known from Dr. Torch. He used kind of a space version of Brangus, and I don't think it's ideal. I really think you need more ground crew. Now, it's also possibly had them, so there are 10 more cards here, so he might have had like a Shizor in hand, or in this deck he might have had like maybe another couple of Januses, or maybe he had more cards to use. I suspect he had more interceptors because he had 2 of these, so I think it was a little heavier in space than it should have been comparatively, but this is what he did. And faced against Johnny Chu. These are the known kind of 43 cards I know about in the top. I don't know for sure the rest. Had 2 Leias, which means probably had 2 Hans. The other decks he's used Bron Burrs. Mirax is good in this era, to kind of act like a kind of a mini Janus, and might have had 2 of those. Probably had an Obi-Wan here. Might have had a couple of sites. Might have launched the assault. Might have also had some senses and altars. So if he did, I think that would have been great. He did have the aim high to kind of disrupt there. He did have I hope she's all right disrupt there. I think this game is a good example of how potentially you could kind of disrupt Brangus very quickly. And I think this would be kind of a good game for us to watch. And again, we're going to do double speed here, and we're going to try to get through this, rather quickly if we can. So let's do this mode and let's get through this. So this game is going to start. So what's happening here? He starts with these 3 things, staging areas. And so immediately, first thing, kind of what are you noticing here? Well, the advantage of playing here is, yes, he's getting staging errors here. Yes, he has 10-4s. He's preventing the Emperor from deploying here. And also, because it's an alien, all sections on alert can't remove its ability to draw destiny. So Melas here, first turn, I think potentially really, 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 really good. So he deploys that there. Good. And deploys the War Room, okay. And he deploys Dread Imperial Starfleet, which, yes, indeed, tells you it's a space deck. And that's the only problem, so far. Gotta be able to defend the Death Star. What did that say? So, used Monarch. Didn't have a lot of copies there. So that's a little problematic for Dr. Torch there. And what's going on? He's just draining slowly but surely. Uses Gunite, get the top card. Hard not to use that card in Reflections 2 or Jabba's Palace Steel deck. It's just so good. That's the problem. All right, so you deployed a Brangus there, but you didn't fight. And to me, that's an issue. But you don't want to lose him. I get it, So now he deploys Luke there. He's draining you twice. And he used a Grimtosh for you, and he returned lots of your cards back to the bottom. So maybe he had a Vader. Maybe he had some other good cards there. It's hard to say, but maybe he had a ability to cancel a drain, but now you're doing it. So he deploys a Corn Horn. Fortunately, Corn Horn is really good. And he can cancel drain, cancel destiny. Now he's able to really pounce on this poor guy. And Brangus is not going to make it. Not going to make it here. Nope, nope, nope. Nope, 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 nope. All right, so now he's draining. Now he has 3 places to drain. He controls 2 battlegrounds, which means he can drain at the War Room here. He's getting the cards he wants to. And Dr. Torch is just suffering here. Unfortunately, he's losing ships. Okay, he has an Endor there, but that helps both players. And now we deployed Gunite. It's harder. So if he did have a Vader, or if he did have a way to fight, it's harder. Pulling a second guy here so that he can lose Blount potential instead of Luke. And he has Civil Disorder. So now he's losing 1 card a turn for the ping, because there's no ground forces here. So this is very problematic, right? And so he's just losing very quickly. Losing very quickly. Okay, so he's deploying, some ties there. Okay, that's good. Retrieve a little bit. Deploying Brangus there. That's good. A little bit. But you didn't start a battle. You didn't fight. You're waiting for your opponent to fight you. He's just draining you more. So you're able to circumvent 1 turn about, that effect there. And then now he deploys Akbar. He drew a 6. That's good, but Akbar has such high forfeit. It doesn't matter. You lose your second Brangus, and that's problematic. So now you have Leia with Saber. Now you have Luke with Saber, and you can just drain a lot here. Have an Anger, Fear, Aggression, and now it's just Marajek, but Marajek is problematic. I prefer, honestly, to draw 50 million cards, I think, probably. It's just an issue. Won't get you saved here. So too many cards of Lost Pile for Dr. Torch, taking too much ping damage, and there's not a whole lot here you could do. Order to engage just in case, so maybe he has a barrier. There's no blaster controls here. Okay, so he deployed there. Okay, trying to retrieve a little bit of force. I get it, but the power of drains, very, very high. So I deployed home 1, just ignoring. Doesn't care, battle me. Another Anger, Fear, Aggression. Losing force. Nothing to challenge. Okay, so you deploy another one there, retrieve a little bit. Okay, fine. that is GG. So, you know, that's a great example of a game just being kind of locked out. So if you're able to move fast, you know, you could potentially get something like that as well. So anyway, I hope some of this discussion is helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. Take care. Thanks.